Well, it's almost 7 o'clock, everybody. So look at that. In fact, it's right 7 o'clock. So why don't we, with your permission, we'll jump right in, and we'll start our evening because we want to be really respectful of everyone's time tonight, and we got lots to get to. So as I say, welcome, and so great to see you at the first Focus on Nature Wednesday webinar. And the topic of our webinar tonight is the inspiration of photography, which I'm really excited about hearing more from our speakers, Simon and Peter. And I hope you are as well. And I think the other exciting thing today is that we're celebrating all the great work and things that Focus on Nature does, because this is in fact Focus on Nature Fest week. And this is one of the highlights of the week, of inviting you in to share some of the expertise and knowledge that the great team at Focus on Nature have, and hopefully we can learn together tonight about some real practical photography tips. My name is Curt Hammond. I'm the Chief Listening Officer at Pearl Street Communications. I'm also the Chief Learning Officer at Four Simple Words. And Pearl Street has had the chance of sponsoring the Oak Tree Project for a number of years. And that's where I've really gotten to know and see Focus on Nature grow. And Focus on Nature is applied to Oak Tree projects many times. I've been so impressed by the dedication of the staff and the team and the board. And this idea of connecting youth and nature through photography is one that's always really inspired me. And so when they asked if I could MC the evening tonight, I was really touched and honored. So thanks very much to everyone at Focus on Nature for letting me be a part of the event tonight. Let's chat before we jump into our speakers and we introduce them and hear some about some of their great experiences. Let's chat a bit about Focus on Nature Fest, because there's lots of stuff going on online this year. And obviously we'd ideally love to be doing this in person, but that's not going to happen for the next little while. So we've moved everything online, and encourage, if you haven't been there, to go to focusonnature.ca to check out all the great things that are happening there, including a fabulous photo gallery of some of the best student images from last year. There's amazing work in there. If you haven't had a chance to go check it out, I really encourage you to do so. There's some beautiful, beautiful work. And to know that's coming from students who've been inspired by this program, it's really humbling. So I encourage you to check that out. While you're there, check out the silent auction, which has almost 30 different prizes where you can be bidding on. So I encourage you to, some great stuff in there as well. There's also these amazing, really creative greeting cards for the holiday season. So I encourage you to get there and buy a pack of holiday cards as well. They're available for you. You can enter a draw for a Nikon DSLR camera, which is pretty exciting. And so the whole week has been a celebration of nature, Focus on Nature, the good work they're doing. And as I say, encourage you to get online to see some of that as well. So far this week, thanks to you and your generosity, Focus on Nature has already raised over $13,000, which is just incredible. And so give yourself a round of applause. And let's see Peter and Simon jumping in there for a round of applause for everyone who's contributed to that already. And again, encourage you to get back in there for the silent auction, buy some greeting cards, and get your name in there for that Nikon camera as well. And again, just a reminder that the mission of Focus on Nature is to connect kids and nature through photography. And that's one of the things we're really chatting about tonight, is that connection of people and nature. And hopefully each of us can walk away from our session tonight with something new to bring to our photography, to our appreciation for nature. And even as our days are getting shorter, they feel, and darker early, hopefully we can get out and enjoy what's left of the season before the snow flies. In fact, on that, let me just quickly reflect. My wife came home early today and we went out for a walk. And I was thinking about getting ready for this event, and it occurred to me that it is such a gift to be able to be having our youth and kids in school connecting with nature in this unique way. And I think I've really come to appreciate the great work that Focus on Nature does. And as I say, tonight I was reminded of going out with my own kids with their phone cameras, not full on DSLRs, but still getting out there and enjoying and connecting with nature that way. So hopefully tonight we can all find something we can take away for our own families and for our own photography as well. Our agenda tonight is going to be really simple. We're going to hear from both Simon Bell and Peter Kelly, who are going to share some of their experiences and and knowledge around photography, and really introduce us to some of the real practical ways and things they've done over the past little while to connect with their photography with nature. After that, after we hear from them both, we'll have a Q&A, and I really encourage you to jump into the Q&A on Zoom and leave us some questions, and we'll be sure to pick those up and ask those of both Peter and Simon as well. So that's our agenda. If you have any questions, by all means, please drop them into the chat. And I encourage you to sit back, enjoy. Hopefully this will be the best 4.5 hours of your week. I'm kidding. We will be out of here by 8 o'clock. So again, thank you for joining us. And I'm going to introduce our two speakers separately. We'll hear from them. We'll do a little back and forth, and then we'll do a Q&A at the end. So please do make good use of our chat today. So first up is Simon Bell, who probably doesn't need any formal introduction for most of us. But I've got some really interesting background. I've learned a little bit of Simon in this process. So I'm going to read his bio because it speaks to all the energy and enthusiasm that Simon has brought this organization. So since being given a hand-me-down box Brownie camera at the age of 6, photography has been core to Simon's life. And that links the many artistic, commercial, and now educational ways that he's been involved with. After studying at York University, Simon worked as a studio photographer before starting his own audiovisual business in Toronto, creating corporate presentations for 20 years. That's a lot of corporate presentations. He deserves a round of applause just for that. Simon has published a series of nature books featuring his 3D photos of wildlife, published by Penguin and Somerville Book Houses. The series has been incredibly successful. In fact, he sold over 150,000 copies in 6 different countries. I didn't realize that, Simon. That's really impressive. We all know Simon in Guelph, of course, as the former publisher of Snapped. And if any of you have been in any events in Guelph in the past years, you've seen Simon at events sharing his skills and enthusiasm. He's been a volunteer instructor with Focus on Nature since 2011 and is now executive director. So please join me in welcoming Simon Bell, who's going to take over a mic. And Simon's going to walk us through, give us some of his experiences and insights on photography and nature. Simon, hand it over to you.
Thank you, Curt. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to use the time I have this evening to share some highlights from my rather long career in photography and perhaps a few tips that I might have picked up on the way as advice for young photographers who may be just starting out at whatever stage they're at. So I started thinking myself as a photographer, around the age of 6. I think my dad got a new camera for Christmas and I inherited his box Brownie. If you don't know what a box Brownie looks like, it's one of these cameras. It could shoot about 12 pictures. You had to wait a couple of weeks to get your pictures back. But when you did, wow, I was hooked. I kind of thought of myself as a photographer ever since then. I'm going to share my screen now to just give you some little bit of background visually on what I'm talking about. So the first thing I did was get a photography album and started putting pictures in it. It's now one of my most treasured, cherished possessions. Pictures of my brothers and sisters when we were young and my dad and mom and stuff like that. I probably kept it going for about 10 years and then I moved on to other things. But when I look back now and I see myself as that young guy with 2 little brothers, I wonder, wow, you can start photography when you're pretty young, which is now something that we know in Focus on Nature. Age doesn't really matter about taking good pictures. For me, taking pictures of my family and trips that we went on was always the big thrill for me. We did a lot of traveling as a family, but the picture that I probably am most proud of when I was 9 years old was a picture of our Queen and her husband, Prince Philip, as they were driving past to open the St. Lawrence Seaway. Now, I don't know if a 9-year-old paparazzi could get a shot like this today, but if you get yourself in the right place at the right time and you've got the right equipment, magic can happen. So I would say to all young photographers, don't underestimate the power of your camera to get a great picture. let's move on to about 10 years later. I went to India with my friend Paul, who was at university with me. We hatched this idea that we could backpack to India. And it was an amazing trip for me to spend this time in the East. The sights and the sounds, the tastes and smells were all so different. And I kind of told myself, don't just hang back and take candid pictures from a distance, get involved with the people. So this was my rickshaw driver one day, and I asked him if I could take a picture. He was more than happy. In fact, I started going around taking pictures of all kinds of people. I couldn't speak their language, but these pictures now are something that really takes me back to that time. And I managed to just buy a scrap album and stick them in, and they bring back fond memories to me now. Paul and I traveled on to Singapore, where we got jobs. We earned enough money working on a boat to get back to university for our second year. So it was kind of like a gap year for us before I think gap years were an idea. On the way back, I got this picture in the market in Kabul, Afghanistan, and I submitted it to a competition and won an honorable mention, which I'm kind of proud of. That was good enough for me starting out, and I still have it hanging on my wall today, something that brings back those kind of memories. So make sure you don't isolate yourself from your environment, but get involved in any way you can to try and get great shots. A few years later, I bought an old telephone truck, put some tie-dyed curtains around it, got a mattress to go over the back wheel well, and a cooler, and off I went to explore Canada. I ended up in the Yukon, where I met 4 guys who had built a raft. They were following the Klondike Gold Rush people, and they were rafting down the Yukon. They gave me their camera and asked if I could take some pictures as they rounded a particularly difficult bend in the river. I was happy to do that, and gave them back their camera. Sort of forgot about the whole thing. But a couple of years later, I was sitting in my dentist's office waiting for an appointment. I picked up a National Geographic, opened it up, and there's my buddies. They sold their story to National Geographic, and I was amazed. And I was even more amazed when I flipped the page, and there was my credit down in the bottom of the page of a double-page spread in National Geographic. I kind of thought, well, I'm going to be a National Geographic photographer. You know, that was my goal. And I kept traveling and taking pictures. Nothing much came of that until I finally settled down in Toronto a few years later to learn some more photography. And I got a job with an audiovisual company, as Curt mentioned. It was called the AV House. And at this time, it was just a time when things were changing, and you could do special effects, optical effects. So you can see I've got a dial there for blue, for yellow, and for magenta, and you can dial any color underneath the camera and capture it with a series of masks. And under my elbow there is an early version of a computer that would actually control the motion control of your stage, that you would have your effects, and you'd get something like this. So you could put a star filter on, you get a little starburst. You could create multiple exposures as you moved your logo or whatever around and create special effects. We'd break them up into multiple different pictures and put them into different projectors and create sort of limited animation shows. It was a challenging time, and the corporations were very demanding. But I learned a set of skills that I still carry today. This was one of the different kind of things I worked on. It was a poster for Chum, and I went down to Young and Bloor just to get a picture of it so I would remember that I worked on something like this. Eventually I started my own business, Bell Production Services, and I hired a great team of other photographers and just producers and people, and we started producing special effects slides for companies, and we'd win either gold or silver awards for many years, maybe like 7 years in a row. So that was a great time for us. One picture we submitted to our association was had won the best picture in the international competition. And it was just this picture of where we created an outline of the seagull and we used our motion control to fly it into a slide. All of this is done optically. There's no digital effects here. So things that we did back then and in many stages, you could do just basically quite quickly now. I had some great clients like the Toronto Stock Exchange. They hired us to make all their speaker support slides. I worked for Apple doing their slides and so many different companies. The Toronto Stock Exchange actually hired us also to make the first multimedia module that sat in the foyer as you came into the stock exchange so that students could learn how the stock exchange worked. Jim Carrey was just starting out as a comedian in Toronto back then, and a friend of a friend was his agent and got me to make a series of pictures of Jim Carrey posing as different people for his comedy show. I didn't actually get to meet him, too bad, but I didn't actually know he would go on to go to Hollywood and become really super famous. Someone who was famous was Carl Sagan, and his art director, John Lomberg, came into my shop one day and asked if we could give a quote for pictures for a book about comets. And I didn't know it was for Carl Sagan at the time, but it proved to be a very rewarding collaboration. Got to go to the book launch of Comet. That's John on the left and Carl in the middle, and yours truly on the right there. Pretty snazzy tie, huh? And that collaboration led to other work. So Carl was shopping around a script for a book he had written called Contact. And I was asked to make some storyboard images that could help sell the script. This was my image of a dodecahedron flying through a wormhole on the way to its other part of the galaxy. Eventually, that movie starred Jodie Foster, I think, and Matthew McConaughey. We also got to work with the Hubble Space Telescope, these are the first set of images that they had that they wanted to publicize. And my friend John had created this painting in the background of a galaxy, and the Space Telescope Institute sent us a bunch of pictures and we arranged them like this. Another project was for the Japanese National Telescope on the top of Mauna Kea in Hawaii. They flew me around in a helicopter with the door off so we could get some amazing pictures, all in 3D of the new Subaru telescope. And then I got to do a tour inside the telescope. There were oxygen stations all around the facility in case you were short of breath because you're at 14,000 feet here. That's a couple of Mitsubishi engineers who were assembling the telescope. You can't really see the mirror, but it's down in there reflecting what's above. And it's 8 meters wide, so it's one of the largest telescopes in the world. That's looking the other way out, and they opened the barn doors so we could let some light in and got that shot. And another final project was to create a portrait of humanity to go on a mission to the planet Saturn. It didn't actually happen, but it was a great project to work on. These were all our models that John had found in Hawaii, representing different age groups and different races. And this was the final shot we produced. It was called A Portrait of Humanity, showing humans in different positions and doing different things that people do, nursing babies, talking and hanging out together, walking. And the sailboat in the background was to represent voyage. And the little shell in the corner was to represent evolution. And of course, I took the picture in 3D. Now, if you can cross your eyes, you could get the 3D effect, but don't bother. There are devices to do that. But 3D was, it's one of those things that not a lot of other people were doing professionally. So I felt I had a lot of room to grow in it. And that's something I would recommend to young photographers. Find a specialty. It's important to have a broad interest, but if you have a specialty and you can work on that and make yourself the best at that area, then you'll build your brand around it, and I think success will come to you. As Curt mentioned, I did get to work on this series of children's books called the Eye to Eye series of books for a local publisher, and it was also published by Penguin. And it had 24 stereo or 3D cards in it, and on a series of different animals. It was mostly shot in zoos, but it was a great project and got me closer to wildlife than I ever imagined. Finally, the publisher sent me to Africa to do a book on Africa, and had a great time because we had a special educational permit to go off-road and get some really nice close-up pictures of some of the animals. I got to spend a morning with a cheetah family, and just had an amazing time. I'd love to go back and do that again. This picture sold quite a few copies after I had taken it, but the publisher unfortunately went out of business soon after I came back from Africa, and the book never got published. Eventually I came to Guelph, and I started with my brother Nicholas, the Snap Guelph newspaper. A lot of work, very hectic, a monthly cycle where you got to do it all over again every month. But after 5 years and 60 odd issues, I felt like I'd really gotten to know a community, and I'd use my photography kind of to bring people together. And I think that's something we could all think about in our photography, is how do we share what we can do? How do we use it in a way that helps people understand where they are, what their environment is, and that sort of thing. It also got me to understand what community spirit really is, you know, hanging out with young people, or just getting to know a community from top to bottom and feeling like you're part of that community. And that's when your photography can really be of benefit. Of course, doing Snap then was a natural segue into volunteering with Focus on Nature, which I got a little information about that soon after I sold my shares in the business, and thought, well, you know, that might bring together certain threads in my life, like community, like photography, and like a love of nature. And now I had something new to learn, how to work with children, how to communicate that. I found that very rewarding. Kids are great to work with. You learn from them as much as they learn from you. And after being a volunteer, I was asked to help run the organization as executive director, and I've been doing that for about 7.5 years now. So what am I doing in my photography now, you might think? Well, I've moved on from the third dimension to the fourth dimension. That would be time. And that sort of means you got to shoot videos, and modern digital cameras shoot excellent video. There's no excuse for not trying your hand at it. This is a little video I made of a monarch butterfly emerging from its chrysalis, and I sped it up about 10 times so that you could see it happen in a reasonable period of time. So what the butterfly is doing now is it's pumping liquid through those black veins to stretch out its wings. And then it has to hang there for a couple of hours to let the wings dry, and then it can fly away. Oops. So bird photography is a big interest of mine. I love trying to get great shots of birds. They're challenging because they don't sit still very long, and they're usually hidden in a bush or something like that. But often if you keep working at it and you've got the right equipment, you can get some great shots. This owl, for instance, was not in the wild, but it was on someone's arm. But it allowed me to get close up and see the detail in those little feathers around its eye. It's pretty amazing. This is a snowy egret, and he was sitting on a park bench in Florida. So I just sort of crouched down underneath and pointed my camera up. And I think this is kind of the last view of a fish before it becomes the egret's breakfast. And hummingbirds, if you ever get down to the tropics, make sure you take your cell phone, because if you know how cell phones can take multiple pictures, and if you press down that button and keep shooting, it shoots so fast that you can freeze the hummingbird's wings, which usually is pretty hard to do without expensive equipment.
I mean, it's Curt. These are brilliant for pictures and story. And I'm just conscious another minute or two, and then we'll have a quick Q&A, and then we'll throw it over to Peter, if that's okay.
Very good. So I'm just finishing off here. Get close up to nature through macro photography. Digital cameras now can get you very close, and the patterns that you see, you know, in butterflies' wings or birds' feathers are something to treasure. The pattern that a little water strider can make on the water, amazing. And crystals in winter. I love checking out windows on a really cold day and see what kind of patterns are made. This went into a book called The Life of Water and had a quote from David Suzuki beside it, which I kind of was very proud of. And you can play around with the contrast afterwards and create some amazing otherworldly kind of pictures. So I'll wrap it up there. I just want to say, use your photography to get yourself out there in the community, to explore nature, to express yourself. And I think you'll be richly rewarded. So thank you. I will stop sharing now and hand it back to you, Curt.
That was just honestly, I don't know where to start. Like, seriously, we're going to take 4.5 hours now just to drill through that. There was some amazing stuff in there. Thank you so much for sharing that. And what an incredible career.
Yeah,
that's honestly fabulous. And so I want to be really respectful of time and get to Peter. Maybe we'll circle back to that. We've got a couple of questions from the group, and these are both excellent. Natalie's wondering, how has your career helped you grow Focus on Nature? So how have these past experiences helped you do all the great things you've done at Focus on Nature?
Well, I think that in some ways, Focus on Nature was a great assembly of some of the different threads in my life and brought them together. I think that as you mature in one career, new doors open up, and you never know where that will take you, but you have to be willing to let one door close and a new door open. And if you see that pattern in your life and you keep following it, life gets richer and richer. And I think you bring with you the skills and the little things that you may not think of, but they're with you, and they come out when you have a new project and you can make them work for you.
Right, brilliant. And you've obviously done that. I mean, look, just this really quick overview of your career, we've seen what an amazing trajectory it's had and all the different, you know, you've obviously seen doors opening and jumped in, especially around the technology piece. I mean, I really want to circle back to the technology at some point, because the changes you've seen in camera photography have just been profound.
Everything you can do on a cell phone now, like you could create a whole movie without ever putting your cell phone down. It's pretty amazing that the things that we would have to do, you know, go buy the film, put it in the camera, shoot the pictures, go get it processed, get it back, put it in a projector, film the projected screen, you know, you can do that all now in one little device in like a fraction of the time and at no cost. Pretty amazing.
It is. We could chat for hours about that. Simon, thanks so much for sharing. There's a couple of questions in there. We'll invite Peter up. We'll listen to Peter, and then we'll have some time at the end for us all to compare notes on your two presentations. And Simon, thanks again for sharing. That was outstanding. Really enjoyed that. Thank you. So let me invite our next speaker up. Peter Kelly is a longtime fan and volunteer at Focus on Nature. Peters has given numerous talks to a broad range of audiences and has co-authored 3 books and articles in the popular and scientific press, and is photographed on every continent, including Antarctica. And actually, we had a discussion how much Antarctica could we bring in tonight, because that sounds really interesting as well. He served as a research associate in integrative biology at the University of Guelph, research director at Rare Reserve in Cambridge, and the coordinator of the Coots Escarpment Eco Park System. He's also on the executive of Nature Guelph and the board of Ontario Nature. Peter, welcome. Thanks so much for taking time to join us tonight. You are welcome to share your screen and wow us with some of your photography. Looking forward to seeing this.
Yeah, thanks for the introduction, Curt. My talk tonight is called Finding Inspiration Locally, or How I Spent My Pandemic Summer and Spring and Fall Vacation, just as a bit of play on words on the classic thing that students would have to do when they came back to school. When Simon first asked me if I would give a presentation on photography and nature, I first thought about showing flora and fauna from different countries, maybe unfamiliar to people in Ontario or Canada. But then I really started thinking about focus on nature and what focus on nature teaches kids, particularly with the classes. And I also started thinking about how my 2020 was. And my 2020 was very much, as everyone's was, a shutdown sort of year. And I had to start to rethink. I love nature and I love photography, but I can't travel. In fact, I can't even go to a lot of natural areas for a long time. Natural areas were even closed. So what can I do this year? And I decided that maybe I just focus locally. It started in February. This is my girlfriend Tammy and I. This was us in Florida. We went to visit her parents, and this is us watching Blue Jays in Florida. And look at those naive pre-COVID happy faces there, not knowing what's about to happen. And this is flash forward to April and the complete shutdown. And these are the Blue Jays that we were watching at that point. All of the photos I'm going to show you today were taken within about 20 or 25 meters of the front door of my house or Tammy's house. So in other words, very close in the bubble. Tammy was my bubble. There was just the two of us. We were back and forth to each other's places. And at first I didn't really have any kind of objective for the pandemic, spring, summer, fall. But this was kind of a monumental photo for me, and I'm not really sure why, but I took this photo, and when I put it up on my computer screen, I thought, man, a blue jay. Now they're kind of bullies of the bird world, and they're kind of loud, but man, that is a beautiful bird, and we see them all the time, and I think we take them for granted. If we didn't have blue jays here, and you went to Costa Rica, I think everyone would be saying, show me the blue jay. Can you take me to hire a guide to show me the blue jay? So I started thinking, well, there's lots of other birds out there, and you have to get outside. And Simon touched on this as well. I have to say that I mean, I've always loved birds, and I'm not a hardcore birder, but I've always loved birding. But a lot of times they're flitting around. They're hard to photograph. You don't really get a good look at them, but we had lots of time this year. So I'll just show you some of this is a black and white warbler singing on a branch. This is a magnolia warbler. This one, I would never have seen it if I hadn't been out with my camera and looking around the yard. This was actually just perched on a little branch in a hedge, and I just caught it out of the corner of my eye. And I just show you some of the throated birds, I call them. All four of these birds have throat in their name. This is a black-throated blue warbler. This is a white-throated sparrow. This was actually shot through a window. So if you keep your windows clean, it's never as good as shooting in person. But in this particular case, it was very close to the window. So got a reasonable shot out the window. The black-throated green warbler and the ruby-throated hummingbird, which Simon also showed a picture of a hummingbird. And we have the ruby-throated hummingbird. It's the only one we get normally here in Southern Ontario. But if you, to people out there, if you're really interested in seeing hummingbirds, get a hummingbird feeder, get a good one. And they really don't mind. You can actually stand, you sit or stand really like still, really close to one of these feeders. The hummingbirds don't mind, and you can get really good close-up shots. And all the shots I'm showing today, I take with my SLR, but like Simon was saying, the point and shoots today are just amazing, and you can get lots of really cool macro shots and phones as well, phone cameras. And we were really blessed that we had a red-headed woodpecker, because I'd only ever seen one of these before, but you can see how close it is. This is Tammy's Christmas lights left over on one of the branches, right outside the window. It was amazing. And we were really fortunate that, you know, we had this family of screech owls that we could follow every day. We would never have known about them if Tammy hadn't been out in her yard, and one of these young owls just fell out of a tree and landed right in front of her on the yard. And so she picked it up, got some gloves on, of course, put it in a tree. And over the course of maybe 2 months, we were out there every morning. Was the first thing. Is like, where are the owls? Where are the owls? Because they'd almost be at a different spot every time. And at one point, there were 6 of them. There was 4 in one tree and 2 in another. And the funny thing is, what's interesting, he's like, oh, well, that's just really fortunate. Well, no, if you talk to Tammy's neighbors, They didn't know there were owls. Like you have to actually get out there. And I mean, we were lucky that this owl kind of dropped in front of her. But you can find screech owls in the city. This is one owl that is not a problem. And well, you can find screech owls if you look. And then of course the spring came, and this is the flowers started coming back. This is a native geranium, the spotted geranium. And then the next two photos are in my lawn. Believe it or not, these are two. They're not native to North America, but still incredibly beautiful. This is a flower known as the Deptford pink, and this is a creeping bellflower. These are both flowers that just popped right out of the lawn. And as well, mushrooms and fungi. This is a this also popped out of the lawn. This is a rosy brittlegill mushroom. And I during this presentation, I'm talking like I'm an expert on all these things. And I certainly knew, my birds, and I knew some butterflies. But really, it's the iNaturalist app that I've been using to identify all these things. It's really spectacular. You should get the iNaturalist app. And they have another app called Seek by iNaturalist. And what you can do is, even if you don't know what these things are, you can photograph them, you can post them on iNaturalist, and there are experts out there who will identify it for you. So it was really amazing learning all of these different things that I didn't know over the course of the pandemic summer. And of course, then the butterflies started coming back. This is a northern crescent, and you're going to see a lot of photos of flowers in the background. And if you don't have flowers where you live, I highly encourage you plant some. If you're interested in photography and interested in seeing all these different insects and butterflies and moths that visit us, and even if you're in an apartment, there are parks, local parks that have flowers. And look at the flowers and look really closely, because you never know what's gonna show up. And you can get really close to some of them, especially in the spring. They're more focused on gathering nectar. This is a painted lady butterfly. And this is a silver spotted skipper butterfly. And, some of them fly away, but this one I just kept creeping closer and closer and closer. It really didn't seem to mind. And I ended up getting a really nice close photo, but really spectacular eye. And then moths, of course. Moths are often ignored. You see them sort of flitting around the lights at night, but we have hundreds and hundreds of species that you can see here in Ontario. And in fact, a couple times we actually put lights out at night to see what moths we could attract. And so this is a moth called the grapevine looper moth. And look at this spectacular moth. Look at its hat. It's spectacular. This is the walnut caterpillar moth. And then I put this in to show you the different forms that moths have. This is a mottled grass veneer moth. Again, I'm sounding like a smarty pants, but these are all, I didn't know any of these names a few months ago. This is all iNaturalist identifying these for me. And this is just amazing. I called this, in my head, I called it the Liberace moth. And for those of a certain age, they might not know what that reference is, but Liberace was a famous pianist. He used to appear on variety shows on TV, and he always wore all these extravagant furs and jewelry and things. And I just felt this looked like Liberace, but it's actually called an elm spanworth moth. And this is called a barberry geometer moth. So they have really interesting names. The five that I'm just showing you five because I just have a short presentation tonight. But they all got a plant name in them, which is kind of neat. Must have been the person who originally gave them that common name, must have been the plant they first saw it on. And this is a lightning bug. So this is a firefly. So this is the technically the Big Dipper firefly. There was a lot of them, I thought, this year, more than I noticed. But then again, maybe I was just out and about and noticing them. But this is what, if you never had a chance to see what they look like when they're not doing their thing in the night sky, this is what they look like. And I only put one photo of spiders on here because there are people who react badly to spiders, but you shouldn't, because spiders are amazing. This is one of the more common spiders. Almost everyone probably have seen this, even if you didn't know what it was. This is the spotted orb weaver spider. And of course, the bees started coming, and the wasps as well. And this is just your common bumblebee. I think a lot of people, when they think of bees, they think of a honeybee or a bumblebee. But I just wanted to put some photos in here to show you that bees have many different colors and many different shapes. This is a metallic epauletted sweat bee. This is a bee, and it looks like it's got that shiny green armor. It's spectacular. Again, this is another bee. This is a brown-winged striped bee, and it's got that little fuzzy coat on the front there. And look at that eye. It's just really, really cool. And I really didn't know much about bees and wasps this summer, but with the pandemic, couldn't go anywhere, spent a lot of time looking at flowers and looking at the things that I could find there. Again, this is another bee. This is a flat-tailed sweat bee. So really, really interesting diversity. And the wasps, again, I'm not afraid of bees or wasps. I could get pretty close, and I don't mind them. They didn't mind me. I was never stung, and they didn't seem to care. This is an interesting one though, because I took this photo and it doesn't even have this wasp doesn't even have a common name, but its scientific name is Parancystrocerus. And I thought that sounded like a dinosaur. It's pretty cool. And it was interesting is that there are only 12 observations on iNaturalist of this wasp in Canada. So you never know what you can stumble across. This is a dark paper wasp, and I really love that rosy patch there that you see. This is a hoverfly, so this is a type of fly. Hoverflies are really cool. They've got that big giant head, but again, they look different from what I think a lot of people's perceptions of flies are. This is a lady beetle. It was interesting to discover that a lot of the lady beetles, the native ones, they're named after the number of spots they have. So this is a 7-spotted lady beetle. One of the spots is hiding on the far side, but there's also a 9-spotted lady beetle, and there's several others that are, their name includes the number of spots that they have on them. And of course, the mantises. I mean, this looks kind of weird because this was actually on the windshield of my car. Both mantises aren't native, but they're really spectacular. This is the Chinese mantis, and the Chinese, you can tell it from the European mantis by those stripes on its face. And there's a European mantis just hanging out on one of the sunflowers. This one was in Tammy's garden. Just really, really cool creatures. I just love them. And this is a northern walking stick, just walking across the leaves in the fall on the lawn. They're, again, you have to get out there and actually look. They're really difficult to see, but if you're actually looking, you get your eye trained, you can find these things. If you're lucky to be near some water, you might get some of the dragonflies. This is an autumn meadowhawk dragonfly, but there's really quite a few species of dragonflies that you can see as well. And this guy, I love this guy. This is, I'd never seen anything like this before. There's that black body and that green kind of claw that hangs down below it. I mean, if this was in a movie and it was, 40 feet long, it would be like one of those terrifying creatures you would see. This is called the Pennsylvania ambush bug. And when I started putting this presentation together, I thought, Pennsylvania ambush, isn't that what Biden did to Trump? So I think it's the Pennsylvania ambush bug, but in my head, I think of it as the Joe Biden bug because that's exactly what happened in the election, right? And katydids, Tammy actually pointed this one out to me. And I'm like, what are you looking at? Everything was green, so I had a hard time even seeing it. This is a black-legged meadow katydid. This is a short-winged meadow katydid, just hanging out on a daylily in the garden. And look at this thing. I mean, I came out the garage door, and there's a plant just sitting in a pot there. And I look, there's some little bit of color, and it's really small. I got really close. I'm like, my God, what is that thing? So this is a red-banded leafhopper. And they're common, but I mean, I don't think many people know that they exist. And, this thing, I think most people, if I showed it to them, would think it was from the tropics.
Peter, it's spectacular.
And after a while, I was starting to see the same things. I wasn't seeing new species. Tammy's got a wood-burning stove, so she had a wood pile. I thought, well, I'm going to look under the wood, see what I find. And I found this guy. So this is a really boring name, brown centipede. I think it's more spectacular that its name gives its credit for. And crickets, I find crickets kind of elusive. I hear them, but then I try to find them and it's difficult. It seems like the sound is coming from all around you, but this is a fall field cricket. And I found this under one of the logs in the wood pile as well.
Peter, these are spectacular. Maybe another minute or two, and then we'll jump back in with Simon.
Yeah.
Thank you.
For sure, almost done. This is a Carolina grasshopper just in the driveway. And the last few photos here are just, again, this is what Focus on Nature teaches kids. You don't have to necessarily find an interesting creature, but just look for patterns, look for tones, look for colors, look for light. This is just a leaf that's been eaten by a few bugs. The light, I love the way the light was hitting these arrowwood leaves. And don't put your camera away just because it's raining out. When the rain stops, go
Yeah.
outside, because it's just amazing what you can see. This is just a hosta flower with the drops coming off of it. This was in the fall, leaves started to turn. I love the way that the water just accumulated there. And then just on an old regular tomato, this the raindrops hanging off the tomato. So just the last slide here. Things to remember: get outside, get outside, get outside. Because you're not going to see these things unless you get outside. And listen, because some of these things make noises and they can attract you. A lot of times we don't really notice that noise. It's a bit of a blur, but if you start picking out the individual sounds, you might be able to find an interesting creature. Look again, and are you sure you looked close enough? Because like the number of times I found things just by being persistent and looking under leaves and that kind of thing. Get the iNatural staff, it's really cool. And get Seek by iNaturalist. Seek in particular, put it on your phone. You go for a hike, you see a plant you don't know. It works best with plants because it has to be something that's not moving. You sort of hold it over the plant, and the phone will actually tell you what the plant is, or give you a close approximation of what it is. So I wanted to thank Simon for inviting me here today, and I hope that some of you got some inspiration to go look for things in and around your own yards and your own neighborhoods. Thank you.
Oh, Peter, absolutely spectacular. Like there's some beautiful, beautiful photography there. What a gift to share all that. And actually one of the questions, and maybe Peter, if you want to unshare your screen, the three of us can have a chat. One of the questions we got on Facebook, and just for clarity, you took all those pictures, Peter, in your backyard. So everything we saw is what you saw in Ontario, correct?
Oh yeah, all the photos were taken this year, and they were
Brilliant.
taken, like I said at the beginning, within 20, 25 meters of the front door of either Tammy's place or my place.
Wow, spectacular. And my big takeaway from just looking at your beautiful work was how, and you mentioned it in your to-do list, was how close you were. Talk to us about that, like getting close to something as small and minute as a bug or a butterfly. Like that praying mantis one was out of this world. Like, talk to us just, I guess, maybe even technically around how you get in close like that. How much
Yeah,
of that is
sure.
you? How much of
So
that is technology?
yeah, so like I said, I mean, I have a macro lens for my SLR, but I was just a few weeks ago watching a mushroom expert taking some just spectacular macro shots with their point and shoot, an Olympus point and shoot. So you don't necessarily have to have the high tech, high priced equipment. Now I'm only showing you the photos I got, right? Now there were lots of times where I was like, yeah, I'm there, and it's gone, right? A mantis is pretty easy. They don't tend to spook very much. As Simon mentioned too in his talk, birds can be frustrating. Again, if you're out there, like I said, it was pandemic year. We had lots of time. To do this.
Right.
Again, butterflies, the number of times a butterfly scooted off before I actually got the photo.
Right.
But really, I think a lot of it is patience and persistence, and having a camera that can do a reasonable macro shot.
Right. Simon, would you agree with that? The need for patience, or maybe just talk to us a bit about the need for patience in being a good photographer.
I find every time I go for a walk, I pretty well see something new or something that makes me say, wow. Patience, yes, for birds, because they won't sit there, and you'll be frustrated more times than not.
Right.
But I think persistence, stick with it until you get something. Patience, persistence, and I don't know, something else. But
another P, we'll find another P. The other takeaway that I had from both of your presentations, which were so great, and thank you so much for sharing them, was this connection. And Simon, you mentioned this in your talk as well, that I think photography has allowed you to connect with both people, ideas, places. And, as we start to think about the good work that Focus on Nature does, maybe we could just have a quick chat around, what's the power of photography and connecting us with either nature or with other people. Like, let's talk about the power of photography and connection. Yeah. Love to hear from you both on that.
I think photography, it was was something very special, like 100 years ago, 150 years ago. It was kind of unique. Now it's ubiquitous. And photography has become democratized. Anybody can pick up a device and take a relatively decent picture if you know how to use it. And for me, it was never going to school. It was like learning from others. So you see someone who knows more than you, hang out with them, get them to hire you. Learn from someone who knows more than you before you branch out. But I think photography is something that, there's just so millions of pictures now being taken. There's probably more pictures taken a year now than we're all taken all through recorded time, they say.
Yeah.
So I want to harp back to, what you do with your pictures, like do something. Don't just leave them on your computer or your laptop to sit there forever. They will disappear. Good. They need to be actualized, if you will, but in physical form. And then they will have life. They will last long beyond you, and they will bring pleasure like they do to me. And they can, you can create a career around it. Basically, that's what I did. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I wasn't going to be a doctor or a lawyer. I just knew I enjoyed photography. So I kept pursuing that. And eventually, through twists and turns, it turned out pretty good.
Good for you. That's a great answer. Peter, there's a question here in the Q&A that I think would be perfect for you. It says, this is from Sarah. She's asking, do you have any tips to get lighting and blurring the background? Some of your pictures, the contrast between the key core element of your picture and the background was amazing. Do you have any tips you can share with us on that?
For sure. If you're using a manual camera that allows you to change the f-stop, this is sort of one of the basic lessons in photography, is if you can set your f-stop to relatively shallow f-stop, so f5.6, f8, let's say, you're going to blur that background. You're shortening the depth of the field. If you set it at f22, then you're going to get both the foreground and the background in focus. So that's why I highly recommend. Yes, it's great to use all the automatic settings, but most cameras, and even on phones, you can use the manual settings. And if you really want to blur that background, I always just shorten up that depth of field and open up the f-stop to like f5.6, something like that. If you don't, and you use your automatic, then you just don't know what you're going to get.
Excellent. There's some great questions here. Another one, a real practical one. Are there any apps you recommend to edit photos? Any apps either of you recommend to edit photos?
So I use, so there's Photoshop, and then there's a more user-friendly version of Photoshop called Photoshop Elements.
Yes.
I love Elements. Photoshop's incredibly expensive. But I really find that in Photoshop Elements, everything that I have ever needed, I can find in Photoshop Elements. So I edit virtually all of my photos in Photoshop Elements.
And are you doing that on your phone or on a computer?
No, I'm doing it on my laptop. So I always,
on your laptop.
I always do it on my laptop. Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. Simon, how about you?
For simple little edits, I just use the application. I have an iPhone or a Mac, and it comes with a Photos program. At first I thought, oh, they've really dumbed it down, but actually you can get in deeper, and you can adjust shadows and highlights and black points and all kinds of things to improve your pictures. Yeah. And then if you need to go do more work, you'd need to go into something like Photoshop. For most things, I like cropping and just brightening up a picture or desaturating. You can just do that right in the app that comes with your device.
Right. As well, too, I want to add that some of those close-up shots that I took were actually cropped. And if you shoot at a high enough resolution, right? Good. If the resolution is high enough that you're shooting at, you can adjust and you can shoot at the absolute maximum, whatever camera you're using. You might not be able to get that close, but if you crop it down and you bring it up, it still looks really, really good. And so quite a few of those, I wasn't as close as you might think, but because I always shoot in the highest resolution, I could crop it down and it still looks really good.
Brilliant. That's great advice. That's excellent advice. Simon, all this, and I guess with putting a COVID lens on there, I mean, we think about the past, technology's changed photography. It's also changed how we're engaging with each other and what we're able to do. And I know it's impacted focus on nature and the good work you do. And I understand that you've got some exciting plans to take some programming online. Can you tell us a bit about that?
I'd be happy to. Yeah, so Focus on Nature, of course, wasn't able to go into schools this year at all. Even our March break camps were canceled, but we did run some summer camps. But in between, we thought, well, we still need to engage the students in any way we can. So we created some online challenges on Instagram. And then we created a very simple little lesson program based on our workshop. And then we thought, well, this is very popular. Let's create something more robust. And I'd like to just share my screen and show you what we're working on right now, because it's almost ready for prime time. And it's called Focus on Nature Online. So we're working with Cindy of 4Chicks Digital and her team, a global group of web developers. And we're putting together this is our landing page or our home page. And it's just to tell teachers or photographers who might be interested what's inside our Focus on Nature Online, including video lessons. We've got 10 video lessons, both in English and French, challenges for students to go out and try and take pictures, check-in activities where they answer some simple questions, a cumulative project to do sort of to sum up all your work, a lounge for teachers to have background information, and then connections to curriculum. So it's called focusonnatureonline.com, and we're not quite ready to launch it, but you can be added to our wait list. There's more pages in here to go and explore. We have pricing depending on whether you're a school district or a school or a class, and it starts at $10 for one individual and goes down from there if you're a homeschool or something. We've got some testimonials and then some FAQ questions. And of course, we're very concerned about student privacy and protecting that. So we've got a lot of special things in place to protect students' identity. So yeah, so I invite people to go to Focus on Nature Online. And if you're interested in signing up for our program, please add yourself to our wait list, and we'll be sure to reply and give you some more information.
So Simon, that looks fabulous. And you're teasing us here. Can you give us a sense of when this might go live?
It's getting very close. We're gonna what we call beta test it next week.
Yeah, great.
With a couple of teachers, just to make sure it's fulfilling its mission and doing what we need it to do, and then it'll be live. So it could be taken up by anyone, anywhere in the world. Really, it's a whole new branching out for Focus on Nature, a whole new audience for us for our programming. We can't go into schools right now, so we're doing it the other way, pivoting on.
I've always so admired how you've been so innovative at Focus on Nature and how you've approached connecting with people, and that's just such another great example. So thanks so much for sharing that with us. That's amazing, Simon.
Pleasure.
So that is almost our time, ladies and gentlemen. I notice that Tyler has put a note in our chat about registering for the draw for the camera. You can do that at the Eventbrite link that we signed up with. And oh, look at this. Want a bonus entry? Be sure to follow us and share this post, and make sure you tag us in the post. Well, there's a great social media play there. So if you haven't already done that, make sure you get over to the Eventbrite and sign up for that to win yourself a camera. Also want to remind us that this is indeed Focus on Nature Week Fest, and the silent auction is running until Friday. So I encourage you to head over to focusonnature.ca to check out those great events. Look at the greeting cards. They are fabulous. You'll really enjoy those. While you're there, check out the student photography. You can see with teaching like Peter and Simon bring how these students create such great work, but there's some amazing work on there. And of course, if you've been inspired by the work tonight and the great things that they're doing, Focus on Nature would be very welcome and appreciative of any gifts you could make through Canada Helps as well. Of course, you can find that link at focusonnature.ca. So just before we wrap up, how about a Focus on Nature round of applause for Peter and Simon for sharing their great work and insights today. We could have taken 2 hours there, gentlemen. That was really, both of you had some great things to share. So thank you very much for that. Really appreciate that.
Thank you, Curt. Hope we can do this again.
I think we should do this again. Before we break, let's also give a round of applause to Taylor Bulstrode, who's been running all the technology for us. Taylor, thank you very much. That's a tough job. and managing some aggressive chat line in there. And again, thank you all very much for joining us tonight. This was a gift. Hopefully this is the first of other sessions that Focus on Nature can run. We'll be running lots of great tips for your photography, for your own photography at focusonnature.ca. So thank you again for your time. Enjoy the rest of your week and make sure you get over the site to have a look at some of those great student photography. Thanks again.